This is Matthew Cratter from Bitcoin University, and today I wanted to talk about Bitcoiners as a political force to reckon with. In my opinion, voting is quite often a complete waste of time. For example, when people say vote libertarian, elect me to drain the swamp, these are probably both tautologies. And I'm a big fan of what Slavoj Žižek said. He compared democracy and voting to an elevator button. In this famous essay, he says it's a well-known fact that the close the door button in most elevators is a totally dysfunctional placebo, which is placed there just to give individuals the impression that they are somehow participating, contributing to the speed of the elevator journey. And I think that in many cases, this can be true about voting. That being said, it's still amazing to see political candidates courting Bitcoiners in 2023. This is a relatively new phenomenon that would have been pretty difficult to believe even 5 years ago. Biden clearly hates Bitcoin. Trump told Mnuchin to quote unquote go after Bitcoin. But now there's this new generation of politicians courting Bitcoiners, as was evident if you watched the videos or if you attended Bitcoin 2023, which just concluded in Miami. I'm not going to go into these in detail, but the RFK speech I thought was especially good, and whoever's writing his talking points for him is doing a really, really good job. So I'll link to these in the description notes below. On this side of the Democrats, you have RFK Jr., who's running for president or running for the nomination for the Democrats. You have Tulsi Gabbard, who also spoke, who was a candidate. I believe she was a primary candidate in 2020 on the side of the Democrats. And then we have Vivek, who is running on the Republican ticket, running for the Republican nomination for president. So I'll link to all three of these, but it's quite amazing to see three very high-level people coming to the Bitcoin conference in Miami and talking to Bitcoiners. Before I go on, though, I just ask you to help me out, help push us over 200,000 subscribers, and please subscribe to the channel. Click that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Now, the most important point to remember in all of this is put not your faith in princes or politicians. I think that's a good rule of thumb in general. Don't waste too much of your time in political debates or action. And it seems like too many Americans, especially, which is really the perspective I'm coming from, spend a lot of time online debating politics and not really convincing each other. But I would say that if you do have access to politicians, and if you feel like doing this, let them know how important Bitcoin is to you. And I would suggest that we keep the message really simple and avoid falling into the endless left-right debate. So tell every politician on either side of the aisle that you are a one-issue voter. You can write to them, you can speak to them in person and say, I am pro-Bitcoin. And you can tell them, don't drive Bitcoin miners overseas with this ridiculous tax that the Biden administration, this 30% tax that the Biden administration wants to impose on Bitcoin miners. You can also tell them, don't threaten my right to self-custody Bitcoin. Don't threaten my right to run a Bitcoin node at home. These are basic property rights that are protected by the U.S. Constitution. They're also basic human rights that we reserve for ourselves, and you should be able to do these things in any country or jurisdiction on earth. And it's not something that we need politicians to grant to us, but it would be nice to have a few politicians who aren't absolute pieces of garbage who could agree to recognize these rights publicly and stand up for private property rights, in particular, the right to self-custody Bitcoin. Now, I'll be very clear, I don't think that we can vote ourselves out of the mess that we're in. The system is far too dysfunctional, and when you have debt to GDP as high as it is, it's very, very difficult to do anything, especially when you have so many institutions that have been captured and corrupted. But one thing we can do is we can try to elect politicians who can at least somewhat delay the reckoning. And by reckoning, I mean this is when Bitcoin will experience a full frontal assault by the state, presumably by the U.S. government, unless we're able, as Corey Clipston said, to win the race to avoid the war, unless we can get enough people on the Bitcoin side that this doesn't happen. So I think this is probably the best use of voting, at least from a Bitcoiner perspective, in the US right now. Ultimately, though, I think the best way to vote will be with your feet. And at some point, Bitcoiners are just going to have to leave jurisdictions that don't treat them well. And this is a suggestion for everyone. You shouldn't be living somewhere that doesn't treat you well. But Bitcoiners are especially well suited for this because you can take your Bitcoin with you. This is the whole sovereign individual thesis, which is a book from, I believe it was published in the late 90s, and I did read it when it came out. The idea that individuals will be mobile and they'll vote with their feet and their money. And so jurisdictions that are kind to rational people, to intelligent people, to people who have resources will flourish at the expense of those countries that treat their citizens and their residents really badly. Now, if you were to change jurisdictions because your particular country wasn't treating you very well, you can't take your real estate with you, you can't take your gold bars with you, you can't take your stocks or bonds with you because they're trapped, they're locked in a brokerage account in that country, but you can take your Bitcoin with you in a brain wallet where you have your recovery seed, your 12 or 24 word recovery seed. This is a very easy way to vote with your feet and take your savings across a border if you need to. So I think this is another form of voting that people often forget. Here's another very important point to remember. Holders of US dollars, holders of other fiat currencies like the euro and the yen and the Australian dollar and the Canadian dollar, etc., and holders of shitcoins, of altcoins, will continue to get poorer relative to Bitcoiners simply because Bitcoin is the apex predator of money. It's the soundest money that's ever existed. And so there's a lot of self-interest in terms of getting into Bitcoin. People will follow the incentives. People will choose the hardest money. And this is what led human civilization to converge on a gold standard. Now we have something much better than physical gold. We have Bitcoin, and I expect it will take decades, but I expect the human civilization to converge on a Bitcoin standard. As this happens, people who remain in the US dollar, fiat currencies, and shitcoins will continue to get poorer relative to Bitcoiners. You can already see this happening in the XRP army, which was always a quite dumb group of people and also mostly bots, but now they've gotten significantly poorer relative to Bitcoiners, as have holders of gold. Here's a chart of XRP versus Bitcoin, and you can see that even the bull market in crypto and Bitcoin was not good to holders of XRP. As the chart moves down, that means Bitcoin is strengthening relative to XRP. You can also see it with gold bugs. You can see it with Monero people who remain very stubborn and keep getting poorer relative to Bitcoiners. Now, this is something I'm not happy about. I don't want anyone to get wrecked. I don't like seeing this, and I would love for these people, even the XRP army, to join us on the winning side, because a lot of the XRP army is just very naive, financially illiterate people who are being taken advantage of by the Ripple folks. It's very unlikely, though, that many of these people are going to make it over to the Bitcoin arc or life raft, unfortunately. So what this means is that Bitcoiners will continue to gain not only wealth, but they'll continue to gain political influence as their wealth increases. And the political influence of Monero people and gold bugs and XRP and Ethereum people and Cardano people will continue to get smaller. Now, here's the best thing about Bitcoin. It's a political tool that approaches politics from a fresh angle, and it doesn't rehearse or force us to rehearse the endless right versus left debates. And on my channel, I try not to engage in these left versus right debates. There's certain issues that I agree with either side on, so I have a more nuanced, complex perspective, but I think yelling at the other side of the aisle is very, very unproductive. And what we've seen in the US is while the reds are fighting with the blues, while the right is fighting with the left, the central bankers continue to do what they're doing at the Fed. And what's interesting, the Republican Party and the Democratic Party do not ever really go against the central bankers. I'd say Ron Paul was one of the few exceptions that makes that rule. So I think it's important when we discuss politics as Bitcoiners to rally around this new Schelling point and to try to leave these debates behind us, this left versus right debates. I want Bitcoin to be a very open tent that is for everyone. Bitcoin is a modern and neutral form of money. It's a voluntary system, and I think one of the nice things about a Bitcoin standard is we won't have one party imposing certain things on us or another party imposing certain things on us. And I think as Bitcoiners, we should be tolerant about these sort of things as long as they don't hurt other people. But Bitcoin really is for everyone. It's for the left, it's for the right, it's for the middle, it's for conservatives, it's for liberals, it's for moderates. Bitcoin is a modern and neutral form of money that everyone can get behind, regardless of their politics, their race, their nationality, their gender, or anything like this. Bitcoin is ethical money for 8 billion humans, as Michael Saylor says, and I think it's a really great phrase. Bitcoin offers us an exit that will lead to a much brighter future for humanity. So this is how I see Bitcoin affecting politics, both Bitcoiners becoming much more powerful and hopefully becoming powerful in a very benevolent way. And the real way that we will move to a Bitcoin standard is not by it being imposed on us as previous standards like the fiat standard was imposed on us, but it's a completely voluntary system. And I would say the more educated people, at least more educated about Bitcoin, will move into the system sooner than other people. But it is a voluntary system, and eventually there'll be nothing left of the other systems. There'll probably still be some fiat money that's forced on people in the form of a CBDC to pay their taxes, etc. But the world will actually be on a Bitcoin standard. And this is what the left and the right and the central bankers and the libertarians and the socialists and the communists, everyone will be saving their wealth in Bitcoin simply because the whole system will have moved over to a Bitcoin standard. If you found this video helpful, be sure to hit that subscribe and like button. Hit the notification bell if you want to be notified when I publish my next video. And let me know your questions and comments in the comment section below. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.